There is a species of monkey that will choose to sit next to a wire mesh mother rather than eat, not because it wasn't hungry, because it was alone. Most people assume loneliness is a uniquely human burden, a byproduct of language, memory, and self-awareness, something that requires a mind sophisticated enough to reflect on its own isolation. But the science tells a very different story, and it starts with an experiment that shocked the psychologist who ran it. In the 1950s, researcher Harry Harlow separated infant rhesus monkeys from their mothers and gave them two artificial substitutes. One was made of bare wire and dispensed milk. The other was covered in soft cloth but offered no food at all. Logic said the infants should cling to whichever one fed them. That's not what happened. The baby monkeys spent nearly all their time clinging to the cloth mother, only leaving briefly to feed from the wire one before rushing back. Comfort mattered more than nourishment. Connection mattered more than survival math. That single finding cracked open a question science had barely dared to ask. If a monkey's brain prioritizes closeness over calories, what happens when that closeness is taken away completely? Here's where it gets interesting. Isolated primates in later studies didn't just become quiet or withdrawn. They developed behaviors almost indistinguishable from human depression. Rocking, self-clutching, a total collapse of curiosity. Some stopped engaging with their environment entirely. Researchers had expected stress. What they found looked disturbingly like grief for a connection that no longer existed. But primates share most of our neural architecture. Skeptics could argue this was simply proximity to human-like minds. So scientists turned to animals with almost nothing in common with us. And the pattern didn't disappear. It got stranger. Prairie voles, small rodents that form lifelong pair bonds, show measurable distress when separated from a mate. Their bodies release elevated cortisol. Their brains show reduced activity in dopamine pathways associated with reward. Functionally, isolation makes their reward system go quiet. The chemistry of losing a partner in a vole looks remarkably similar to the chemistry of heartbreak in a human. That should have been the strangest finding. It wasn't. Elephants have been observed returning to the bones of dead herd members years later, touching the skulls gently with their trunks, sometimes standing motionless beside them for long stretches of time. Orcas have been recorded carrying deceased calves through the water for over 2 weeks, refusing to let go even as the body decomposed. These are not accidental behaviors. They require sustained motivation, energy expenditure, and in the orca's case, active resistance to an instinct that would normally push the animal to abandon a non-viable offspring immediately. Something is clearly overriding pure survival logic. The deeper question is, what? Neuroscience offers a partial answer, and it reshapes the entire conversation. Loneliness in mammals appears to be regulated by an ancient system built around oxytocin, a hormone involved in social bonding across nearly every mammalian species studied. When social contact drops below a certain threshold, the brain doesn't simply register less input. It registers a state closer to physical pain. Brain imaging in socially isolated animals shows activation in regions overlapping with the neural pathways for physical injury. Isolation doesn't just feel bad. On a chemical level, it may register as a wound. This suggests loneliness isn't a psychological invention of complex minds. It's a survival mechanism far older than human consciousness. For a social species, disconnection from the group has always meant a higher risk of predation, starvation, and death. Evolution didn't need to invent an emotion called loneliness. It needed a signal painful enough to push individuals back toward the group before it was too late. Pain was the tool it already had. But if loneliness is simply an ancient alarm system, why does it look so specific? Why does a vole seek its exact mate rather than any other vole? Why does an elephant return to one particular skull among scattered bones? This is where the science becomes harder to explain. Some researchers argue that in highly social species, the brain doesn't just track social contact as a generic quantity. It tracks specific relationships. Individual bonds appear to be encoded distinctly, meaning the loss of one particular companion cannot always be replaced by the presence of another. That would mean the ache isn't just not enough contact, it's the absence of one specific animal that mattered. That idea unsettles a lot of people because it means loneliness may not require self-awareness at all. It doesn't need a creature capable of thinking, "I am alone." It only needs a nervous system wired to recognize the difference between one specific presence and its absence. And this is where the mystery deepens into something larger than any single species. If an ancient neural circuit can produce grief-like behavior in a vole, and something resembling depression in an isolated monkey, and a 2-week vigil in a mother orca, then loneliness may not be a human emotion that animals occasionally borrow. It may be the reverse. Human loneliness may be one branch of a mechanism that evolution built long before there were humans to feel it. That reframes what connection actually is. Not a cultural comfort, not a modern convenience, a biological requirement etched into brains that predate language, tools, and self-reflection by tens of millions of years. Every species capable of forming bonds appears to carry, somewhere in its neural wiring, the capacity to suffer when those bonds are broken. Which means when a wild animal stops eating after losing a mate, or a monkey clings to fabric instead of food, or an orca refuses to release a body already lost, it isn't behaving strangely. It's behaving exactly the way a deeply social brain is built to behave. The strangeness was never in the animal. It was in our assumption that this kind of pain belonged to us alone. Perhaps loneliness was never a human invention at all. Perhaps it's simply the price every social creature pays for being built to need each other, a debt written into the nervous system long before any of us existed to name it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, subscribe for more. See you in the next one.